I'm Jane. This is my channel. It's new, so thank you for being here. Today I'll be walking through how I made this cottagecore bodice. It's based on a dirndl pattern, which is a sort of like folkwear dress, like for Oktoberfest and that kind of thing. It's by the company Folkwear, but I just sort of did the bodice and did my own thing with it and altered the pattern to suit my vision. I also used some historical techniques in this piece. I'll go over those as I make it mostly, but these historical techniques are things that I've learned from costuming for about a year now. It's not historically accurate as a whole for a lot of reasons, but I think it would be really cute to wear to a Ren fair or more casual events that I want to be sort of in this costume for, because I already had the skirt and I already had the shift. This is like a very comfortable, easy outfit. And actually this pattern was recommended to people, you know, kind of when the Ren fairs started. Or at least I've read this in some like sewing and historical costuming blog posts. Basically, the event organizers would tell people to make the bodice part and then the skirt part separately and like lengthen the skirt a little bit, because dirndls are usually about knee length, and then sort of wear them together but make sure that they were like separated at the waistline. Honestly, this bodice turned out way more cottagecore than I thought it would. But I'm actually really happy about that because I don't have a ton of cottagecore clothes and I think it came out really cute. So I'm very happy. This is the fashion fabric, obviously. I found this for $6 at this art supplies thrift store near my house. And it's I think it's a home decorating fabric, but it is like a twill weave, a diagonal weave. But it has a sort of corduroy texture, even though it's definitely not corduroy. But I just thought the pattern was so pretty, and you know, the browns and like sort of natural colors would make like a really cute historical inspired garment. So there's that. Line it, I will be using this old sheet. It is 100% cotton, and also so is the fashion fabric. My mom just sort of gives me fabric to sew with sometimes. It's usually sheets that she doesn't want or found or whatever. So I usually end up using them as linings just because it's very cost efficient, and having a closed studio when it comes to sewing and painting is really important to me. So I almost never throw any fabric or thread away. I always reuse it, as even like stuffing. I try to never waste, and I try to thrift and sort of like take people's scraps and extra fabric as much as possible, because it's really important to me to be environmentally responsible with this hobby, profession, whatever you want to call it. I think that's about it from me for the intro, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Yeah. Come sew with me. After I traced the pattern pieces onto Swedish pattern paper, I then cut them out and traced them on the fabric with tailor's chalk, and then, you know, cut them out. And then I was left with all these pieces. There are 2 gussets, a placket, which I'm not sure I'll use, 2 front pieces, and a back piece. I also transferred all the pattern markings for the gussets, the darts, and the boning channels, and the eyelets. I'm doing all the same scenes and techniques on the lining, and I will attach them together at the end with binding tape. This is how a lot of linings were attached in most historical garments, at least into the Industrial Revolution. The first step of sewing this project is to sew the dart on the strap of the bodice. I just pin them in place and then use a back stitch to secure them. And then I did the same thing on the lining. Next, I'm inserting the gussets, which are these triangular pieces of fabric. They can be a little tricky, and I'm happy I'm hand sewing this. Here, I am back stitching them in one side at a time. There's a bit of a trick to it. You put the gusset on either side, right sides together, and sew one half of the triangle, and then you fold the bodice in half and do the other side. I like to reinforce my gussets with some extra stitching, either with a simple running stitch just inside the seam allowance about 1/8 of an inch away from the regular seam, or just some whip stitches along the outside of the seam. I did the first one on the lining and the second one with the whip stitches on the bodice, like the fashion fabric. It makes the gusset a little sturdier, and I feel like I can be a little rougher with the finished garment because it's so secure. The next step of the garment's construction is to sew the front pieces to the back piece, and then the fronts and the backs of the straps together. I'm using a back stitch for this as well. Really is the working horse of the hand sewing world. Here I'm marking out where the extra boning channels will go. The original pattern only had a boning channel for each edge of the front pieces, but I decided to add in one at each seam under the arm just for a little extra stability and to prevent wrinkles from when I actually wear it. I'm just doing this as a simple running stitch because it doesn't have to be very stable. It's just to keep the boning where it's supposed to be. And here I'm joining the lining to the fashion fabric after they're both completed individually. I'm just pinning to make sure that they are pretty much the same and fit comfortably in each shell and all the measurements are correct. The longest step of making this garment by far was to bind all the edges with bias tape. I'm lucky I had a couple packs of this pink bias tape just in my stash already. I used about 1.5 packs, which comes out to about $4. So I did the top edge and the armholes, and then I'll be inserting the bones, and then I will do the front edges and the bottom to hold everything in. It's kind of a long process. I'm pretty precise about it. I first pin the bias tape along the edge, and then I sew along that first fold with just a running stitch to keep it in place. And then I'll go back, pin it in place again, and then fold it over and slip stitch that second edge of the bias tape to the edge of the garment. This is a very historical method. Not that this project is very historical at all, but a lot of stays in the late Elizabethan period were bound this way. Although they were not bound with bias tape, it was just self-binding on straight grain because bias tape has to be cut at a 45-degree angle on your fabric, and it's really expensive if fabric is the most expensive part of the garment. Oh gosh, this is going on forever. So much binding. So much binding. So I'm pulling out some 4mm synthetic whalebone boning, which I have left over from some Regency short stays I made a couple months ago. I got it from Burnley and Trowbridge, one of my favorite online stores for historical costuming supplies thus far. It has it for about $150 USD a yard. I'm using 2 7¼ inch pieces and 2 7-inch pieces, which is about $1.25. I could have also used some zip ties or, you know, Joann's kind of boning, but this is what I had in my stash already. The final part of this project is to sew the eyelets. The original pattern uses grommets, but I've heard bad things about them. you know, because they cut the fabric instead of stretching it. So I have always just done eyelets. One other thing, I changed the eyelet hole arrangement from the original pattern from sort of crisscross lacing to spiral lacing. If you don't know what those are, I suggest Googling them because, you know, there is a difference. Spiral lacing is more historical, but it doesn't really matter. It was a pretty easy change. I actually used to really hate making eyelets until I started using some actual thread meant for buttonholes, and then I started to like it a lot more. It's pretty easy. You basically stretch that hole through the fabric, and then you know, secure it with the edges of the hole with a couple whip stitches, and then you go around with blanket stitches in a circle, and it creates a really sturdy lacing hole that can stand up to a lot of tension, because it isn't, you know, the fabric doesn't fray, the strength of it isn't compromised. So that's how I made this bodice. I actually had a lot of fun doing this. I've hand sewn a few projects completely, but this was nice because it was a little bit smaller than I usually go with hand sewn projects. Although like I think if I were to do it next time, I would go one size smaller because of stays and not corsets, but stays, which is pre-Victorian sort of corset type things. You usually want the dimensions to be smaller so that there's a gap in the lacing. So I might do that differently next time. I mean, I have plenty of fabric. I could probably do it again. Maybe not right now though, since I just finished it. I'm sorry if the filming was a little weird. This is my first YouTube video, pretty much ever. And I am by no means a pro at editing. I also don't have like the best equipment yet. I really just wanted to have some fun and try it out before I fully committed. I've only been sewing a lot for about almost a year. I started last May because my fiance and I wanted to go to the Red Fair, and I thought it would be cool to make our own costumes, and they didn't turn out awesome, but I think they were pretty good for, you know, someone who didn't have much sewing experience beyond like being a little kid and sewing pillows. So yes, my channel is new and I am very new at this, so I will be uploading once a month for now, sewing and painting content. I know it's kind of risky to go with two different niches, but I'm gonna give it a try. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate it. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. I'm happy that at least a couple people out there watched my video and hopefully enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you so much, and I'll see you in my next video.